I'm Andrea Fallon, founder of Strategy Concepts, and I'm so thrilled to be here and interview you, Angel, today. It's something I've been looking forward to for a while, because when you think about the theme, Step Up and Rise, you've really done that in every aspect of your life. So I thought that we could get started and just share what you've been up to over the past year.
Well, first, can I say thank you for having me and thank you for sitting down. I know this conversation is going to be exciting because I'm excited to have the conversation. I'm going to pause for a second because I know we have several people still trying to get into the meeting. So I'm going to have an awkward 20-second pause so we can admit everybody to make sure they can hear everything.
I love that. A good moment of just quiet and zen. We don't get enough of that.
No, we don't. Christine, you think we're good with the lobby?
I think so. I think we're good. Yeah. We got a couple more. Maybe give it one more minute.
And thank you for everyone who is joining today. We're super excited for you to be a part of this conversation. At the end, Christine will jump in. She's going to be fielding your questions along the way, and there will be an opportunity for Q&A. So certainly submit your questions as we have the discussion. We're really excited to hear from you. All right, Angel, I think let's just get started, and I think people will catch up. So again, our theme this year is Step Up and Rise, and it's a really exciting theme because it's not necessarily specific to any level of your career, right? We could step up at any stage. And again, when I think about this theme, you've really stepped up in every aspect of your life. So I thought we could get started by sharing what you've been up to.
So there has been a lot going on, especially in the past, I would say 6 months, even if you go back to 2 years ago. My family relocated from Northwest Arkansas to the central part of the great state of Arkansas, the natural state. I recently started a new career journey, still in merchandising, but with a new company, which has been an awesome transition. We are building a house. And the thing that's really impacted us a lot in so many different ways is we recently, my husband and I and our family got custody of my little cousin in October. So a lot changing over here in the Beasley household.
Wow. Well, congratulations. It must have been a really special Mother's Day with your family. So, I've shared with you, I follow you on Instagram. One of the things that I really love is that you're very open with who you are and you share your journey. So as like an Instagram viewer, it really feels like this all happened at once, right? When you're watching it. Is that how it felt on the receiving end when you're living it?
So Instagram is tricky because people think, oh my God, you're overnight success, or I walk around and people think I'm famous. And the reality is that I've been doing this work, whether it's on my mental health, physical activity. I talk about working out a lot on there. I will share what I do in business, but I've been doing this stuff for a very long time. I just recently, I would say in the past, maybe 3 years, got into being more transparent on social media. And then recently in January, started sharing my get back in shape, because I've been in shape most of my life. I was a dancer, I was an athlete, gotten in shape after kids, but something happened in COVID. I don't know about you guys, but sitting all day in front of the computer and eating snacks took a toll on my body. So I just wanted to be transparent with people that follow me, most of which are my friends, that it's okay. Your body got you through probably the hardest crisis we've all experienced in our healthcare crisis we've all experienced in our lifetime. And things happen, but your body got you through it. So just trying to be transparent about my journey.
I love it. I think so many people work so hard to make their lives look perfect or make their journey look perfect. And I appreciate that you're really raw with the journey. So I thought we could go back to the beginning. How did you end up in retail? We'd love to hear about your origin story.
So I always like to start from the very, very beginning of where I'm born. I'm originally from Louisiana, but grew up in Arkansas. Like I said earlier, I was an athlete, a dancer, loved dance, and into the creative arts for most of my life, and went to the University of Arkansas, where I majored in journalism, but I spent most of my time focusing on being a dancer. I danced for the Hogs, so football games, basketball, even baseball. Don't ask me how you cheer for baseball, but there's a way to cheer for baseball. And then when I got out of school, I quickly realized that I was not going to be the next Oprah Winfrey. So I immediately opened dance studios with my business partner. We had 2 dance studios in Northwest Arkansas with about 500 students. We taught tap, jazz, hip hop, pom, all the fun things, and had a store within our studio where we sold a little merchandise. And that's really where I got that entrepreneurial spirit. Well, truthfully, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but that's when I really got to put it in practice. I then, after 5 years of the dance studio, sold my shares and we moved to Texas, where I started my corporate career. Now, that was a hard transition for me. From being up dancing all day to sitting was a tough transition, but I learned a lot during that time. Then we relocated back to Arkansas, and that's where I started my career at Walmart. I spent the first year in marketing. Then I moved to visual merchandising, supporting home and outdoor living. Probably my hardest job in my career. Worked a lot of hours. It was crazy. Plus learning Walmart language. Then I got my dream job, which was being a beer buyer. Um, Probably why I'm still working off my beer gut. I sampled a lot of products during that time period. I left the company for 3 years, and I started to work in a digital marketing company as a director of sales, selling B2B. And then I would say my second dream job was working at Anheuser-Busch. And during that time, I ran trade marketing and strategy and worked on the e-com business, selling directly to Walmart. So that was a lot of fun. And then went back to Walmart for 3 years. And that's where people, I guess my social media presence started to shine a little more because I started talking about what I was doing at work and personally, because it tied directly into the business I was in, which was a beauty merchant on the hair team. And for those of you that know me on the call, know that every time you see me, my hair is going to be different. Like today, I have a passion for hair and beauty for so many different reasons, but that was a very interesting time in my career. I was under leaders that I definitely respected and learned a ton from, but also got to create awesome brands, working with big companies like P&G and small indie brands like Tia Mowry's brand that we built together. And then since December, I've been back at CVS, or I moved to CVS in the same type of capacity as the DMM of health and wellness. So big journey from a career standpoint. Personally, I have 4 kids, 3 of which I birthed, one that I told you guys about earlier, that I have custody of, and I've been married for a long time, but I won't say how old because then y'all will start adding up my age.
You don't need to worry about that yet. So again, the theme is right, stepping up and rising. And you have an amazing journey. You're still on it. But you've made some transitions. And I'm sure that throughout your career, the motivators for the transitions were always different, right? Or the motivation. But how do you know when you are ready for that next opportunity? Like, is there a certain path, or what advice do you give people to ready themselves for the next step?
So I'm going to say there's 2 parts for me. One part is a lot of my transitions actually happen because of family choices, pregnancy, and wanting a job that wasn't as stressful or demanding, or currently needing to be home and work from home and having that flexibility, were really career moves based on a personal need. I've had other moments in life where my career moves were based on, I have the knowledge, I have the skill set. Let me go get and ask for what I want or what I think I deserve. So, my advice to people is to really understand in your life what you need at that moment while always looking at your future state. Because I can make a personal decision to leave a company or to go to a new job, but I still am always looking at what's my overall vision for my life and my family. And does that next move fit into that? Or does it cause me to go in a different direction that I don't want to go?
Did you ever have any moves that scared you? Because, a lot of women statistically over prepare for the next move. So did you ever have that moment where you felt a little bit scared about the move?
I would say when I became a merchant, the beer merchant role was scary. You would think opening your own business, but I was naive and young. And so I thought I could do everything. When you're 23, you think, oh, this is going to be easy. So I learned quickly that it wasn't. But going from being a support to the merchandising organization to actually owning the P&L and having that responsibility, I was terrified. But I spent a lot of time studying. I had a counterpart that was brilliant at the P&L. We would go lock ourselves in the room and go line by line. I would spend time at night studying products, reading articles. So I did a ton of prep while on the job to ensure that I wasn't suffering from imposter syndrome, which I know we're going to talk about at some point.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to imposter syndrome. But I wanted to kind of continue down the path of your career because, we have a clear understanding of the merchant, and it's great to hear how you got that. But I would love to hear about Be Easy. That's the right pronunciation, right? Be Easy.
Yes.
So just talking to, I didn't realize you started it at 23. So want to hear about that, hear about your business partner, and what does the business mean to your family and your expanded family?
So the business that I actually started when I was 23 was my dance studio. That was called Backstage Dance. So that's my first foray into entrepreneurship. Be Easy actually is about 6 years old, and it was developed with my husband and I. And we didn't do it to start a company. We had been going through some family issues. I always say the band was about to break up. And we sat down as a couple and said, what do we need to do to create a vision and a path for our lives that can help mend? If you've been in a marriage for a long time, as long as I have, you have these ups and downs, how you mend it and create something that will last and leave a legacy. And so we developed 5 pillars associated with Be Easy. And Be Easy, it's about living the simple life consistently so extraordinary things become simple. And so we created this motto and these 5 pillars to live our personal lives by so we could have a successful family. And then out of that, because fitness and wellness was one of the pillars. My husband's really into fitness. So he started training, and then he was like, oh, I want clothes with the Be Easy logo just to represent what we stand for. And then it has evolved into this community and this movement of people that come together. We do fitness workouts with a range of people. We have clothing, and we're moving into other segments that make your whole life well.
That's amazing. So is your family motto Be Easy? If I'm hearing you,
Yes.
I love that. That's great. So Be Easy you're the CEO and founder of it. I know that you're killing it. You're doing TV and podcast appearances on the weekend. And it looks like your kids are involved as well. Is that right? Are they your models?
There are models. They even are creative directors, particularly my daughter, Germany. She's a super creative being, and she will help design the clothes and come up with color schemes. So they are really involved.
That's great. So managing Be Easy, it's important to your family. It's clearly you shared how it's brought your family together. It feeds your creativity and it makes you better, hopefully, right? A better well-being. And there's a lot of research and data that shows that executives who have a passion project unrelated to their day-to-day really elevates the overall performance at the place of their day-to-day business and then their passion project. So with that said, there's always going to be a naysayer, right, who says, oh, they're taking on too much. How would you advise other leaders who are looking to start something new? And how would you advise that they bring that forth to their current organization?
I would say I've been blessed that in my former employee that they were real. My leadership was really supportive about what I was doing. So I never really had to hide it, but I really started Be Easy after I was already there. Coming into my new organization, I was able to be upfront in the interview process and also meet with ethics and have legal documents signed so they know what I'm working on, and I'm transparent with them to make sure I'm not doing anything unethical. So I would say be upfront, be honest. You don't have to hide who you are, um, and work with your leaders to make sure they understand that you do have things outside of work that you're passionate about. But then when you're at work, you have to show up. You have to show up, and I always say, be you good, not just good, but be you good. So you show up in a way that's authentic to you, and you're really good at your job.
Great. And when you do have that new moment within your job, because you mentioned you've had some really great transitions, and you went back to Walmart, right? You were there and then you took on a different role. So it sounds like you're really good at maintaining the relationships and transitioning. How do you tell other people to hold on to the relationships that they are currently, moving away from and to build the new foundation?
So to me, people are the most important thing in any room that you enter in, whether that's work or at the kids' soccer game, anywhere you go. I believe people are the most important. All this stuff that we do, we're not in our jobs. We're not doing anything like curing cancer. We're providing products to help people, but the people that we interact every day with, it's incredibly important. And so when I come into a role, I always say, I see you first, then the business second. And that allows me to create these real connections, meaningful connections with folks. So when I leave a company, I leave the business, but I don't leave the people. They can always pick up the phone and text and call, and they do. And I think, relationships are important. And sometimes you do have areas where you burn the bridge and you make mistakes. But if you come in with a heart where you're always trying to be a light, and show up. I think I told you yesterday, my name, Angel, is messenger of God. And so my purpose is to come into a space and be a light and not be a detraction from that.
It's wonderful. And I'm sure as a leader, it trickles down to your team. So have you ever had to mentor anybody else on being a light, and how do you bring that positivity to the role?
Yeah, mentorship is something that's near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of mentees and then people that mentor me. I think you need to have somebody pouring into you while you pour out so you don't get empty. Funny enough that one of my mentees, we talk often about how she gets really serious about business, which is amazing because she's brilliant and she's super smart. Ivy Leaguer, which I'm a state schooler, but we talk about, when you send the email, send it to me, or through it with me to make sure your language isn't abrasive and that you're coming with not a no mentality, but a collaborative mentality. So always just trying to tell myself to be collaborative, because sometimes in business, especially in these big businesses where you're moving fast, you can get short and cut people off and want to get to the point. But at the end of the day, you got to show up next week with the same group of people and try to move forward with the business. So it's a balance that you have to maintain.
Yeah, it is. And it could be tough with emails because the tone is really hard to determine through emails. Okay, so I also wanted to jump into, I wanted to talk a little bit. We talked about imposter syndrome, so I wanted to go there. But first, I want to kind of just state the obvious. Like, Angel, you have every major life event occurring right now, and you're thriving. And I wanted to hear, do you ever have moments where you just feel overwhelmed? And what does that look like? And go from there. Because it's a lot to look at. I mean, you're doing great.
Yes, if this probably would have been 5 years ago, I would have been breaking down. And I say that I'm going to be super transparent. I spent most of my 20s and most of my 30s, now I'm telling you my age, dealing with bouts of depression, whether that was postpartum depression, what I've been diagnosed with that I don't have anymore, thank goodness, what's called hidden depression, where you can show up to a space and people think you're doing well and awesome, but you're dying on the inside. And so that comes from wanting to be perfect in every aspect of life, especially social perfectionism. And because I've had battles with that for almost 2 decades, I've gotten a lot of skills to be able to combat it and to be in a better space mentally. So I went through therapy. I've done Reiki healing. I'm also spiritual. So going to church, and also my friend group. We have the best group chats, and we've got 2 different ones on text message and on Instagram, and we can simultaneously have a conversation on Instagram, which is different than the conversation we're having on the group chat. And then my husband has been my biggest supporter throughout this journey with mental illness and dealing with depression in that way. And because I've gotten the skills, I know how to say no, I know how to rest, and I know how to shut things off when I need to shut things off. I'm able to handle all of these different things at once without freaking out anymore.
It's great. You've really created a toolbox, but it took work to do it.
A lot of work.
So the term is hidden depression. Is that something now that you've experienced it impacts your relationships with other people, as far as, you've mentioned you could be smiling on the outside, but on the inside, you're dealing with other feelings. So on the receiving end of how does that impact your interaction with team members, or even with your Be Easy business with some of your clients there?
Yeah, one thing it has allowed me to do is have empathy for people. And I am my hardest critic. I can be so hard on myself, but I give other people so much grace because I know what it feels like to have that pressure that you put on yourself. So that is one gift that's come out of it. I have been in meetings and forums like this where I've talked about it and people reach out on the other end, and I'm able to give them resources. I had one coworker whose daughter was going through a terrible bout of depression, and because I talked about it at work and actually connected her with my therapist, the teenager is thriving now. So it just opens the door to have real conversations, because everybody got something that they're going through. It may not be depression, but it is something. And it just helps me see people, like really see people past the facade.
Yeah. And there was a book you mentioned that you wanted to share the name of.
I'll have to put it in the chat. It's called Hidden Depression. My therapist actually wrote the book. Now, don't text her or email her and say, tell me about Angel's sessions, because she's not going to. But she specializes with executive leaders, top performers, high performers. That's her specialty, because she sees how much pressure when you're in these high positions, you're highly visible, and you want to be really great at what you do, the back end of that and what that looks like and how to help you through it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And part of that depression, it sounds like, and I think, I could relate with the feelings of perfectionism and the anxiety over typos or mistakes. So that's where I'm kind of going with that, is like part of that, really the feeling of intense anxiety. And when you do now have a human error, how do you move forward, and how do you help other people forgive themselves?
Yes, I would. If I could see everybody, I would say, raise your hand if when you make a mistake, you think about it over and over and over and over again. I'm sure most of us would have our hand up, especially if you are in a corporate space and you're a high performer. I am very self-aware. So the good thing is, like, I know I'm probably going to be late to a meeting, or I may miss a deadline. And I'm okay with being like, okay, I'm going to be late. I'm going to miss the deadline. But it's typically when I say the wrong thing, I have a misspelling on a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to think about that thing all night, that one word that the I and the E were switched. But I've learned how to shorten my cycle. And when I mean cycle of the, oh my God, I suck, I failed, I suck, I failed, I suck, I failed. Like, I try to go through that really quickly to shorten the time frame to move on to the present. And as I was thinking about this, it helps that I was an athlete at one point in life. I played softball and basketball. And so when you have an air ball, which I've had many, in front of all these fans and people are screaming air ball, it's time to run down to the end of the court and play defense. You cannot think about the play before unless you want a series of bad plays. So I try to use that in life. Like, you made the mistake, go through the process of the and then move forward.
Well, I think that it's really reassuring for a lot of people listening to know that they're not alone, right? That we're not alone when we have these negative conversations with ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to hit another heavy topic. We went to the background, but I want to talk about imposter syndrome, because I really think it's like a very loaded word. And I will kind of share that we touched on this yesterday. So I wanted to get your perspective on the word and what it means to you.
I would say I thought I suffered from imposter syndrome. Can't say the word today. Most of my career, because I was non-traditional, journalist major, dance studio owner, and then coming into a corporate business. So I always felt like I don't belong here. But then there was an article, and I should have looked the article up. I don't know if it was in Forbes, but it talked about how people of color and women don't suffer from imposter syndrome. They actually have a real reality of corporate America was not built with us in mind and or for us. And so we're now in a space where we've infiltrated and we're dominating and we're doing all these awesome things in it. But sometimes you walk in the room and you don't feel like you belong because it wasn't intended for you to be there. So I now come into spaces knowing that the way I feel is real, and that's okay, but I'm here to break ceilings. I've heard somebody say break concrete ceilings, not just glass ceilings, and be the voice that is different, that looks different, that feels different, not just for myself, but for my coworkers and the people that are going to come after me.
Yeah, I think like there needs to be a new word for it, right? Because imposter syndrome somewhat implies that it's how you're perceiving the experience, when there really are times where you're not getting the feeling of inclusivity or getting the credit that you've earned. So we're going to figure out a new word for that. And I think it's identifying your surroundings. So I guess my next question on that is, when you're in that situation that wasn't really designed, or maybe somebody isn't, making you feel welcome. Is there any like experience that stands out, or more so like a reaction that you felt like this really helped me and somebody else could learn from this?
Yes, when I was a merchant, the first go around when I was a beer merchant, and beer is a very male driven category. So typically I was the only person that looked like me in the room. But if you've ever been to Walmart, they have those small supplier rooms in the front, and the suppliers are waiting on you, and you walk in and you start the meeting. Well, there was multiple occasions where I would walk in the room and sit down and be ready to start the meeting, to have the conversation and then pitch something. And they would say, "Oh, we're waiting on our buyer." I'm like, "Well, I am the buyer."
Yeah.
So it was all, and they're always like, "Oh, sorry." But they are surprised that a person like me is the one making the decisions and owning the P&L, which is, there aren't a lot of Black women or Black people in general that own the P&L. There's a lot of support folks, but not people that actually own the P&L. So I experienced that a lot, a lot of microaggressions that happen, where, there's two Black people on the team and they mix up your names. So it happens probably weekly, in business, but you get used to it and you let it roll off your back and you show up and kill it and give them a different impression of what a woman can do in business.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing where, we talked about the reaction to the typos, right? Hopefully the reaction is they're going home and repeating the scenario in their head, and it won't happen again. So thank you for sharing that. So I just want to thank you. I think that you've been really great about sharing vulnerabilities along the way, and the fact that it's not necessarily this one track up. Like, we may make decisions that are best for our family, but there's still this growth and this learning from it. So really appreciate you for sharing that as well. One thing I want to say that you didn't bring up is that you were a backup dancer for Beyonce, and I promised you I would if you didn't. So I think that's just a really cool thing to know about you. And with that said, I mean, it's a little lighter topic, but how has that influenced you? Like, does that make you more comfortable in public appearances? How does that influence your overall career?
So I'll have to correct it a little bit. I wish I was actually a backup dancer for Beyonce. What really is the case is that I made it to her final round to become a backup dancer in the historic Harlem Dance Studio in New York. I went to audition, made it to the second round, went to audition. There was about 16 of us there, learned 3 dances in 30 minutes, and in walks Beyonce. And it was the worst audition of my life. Now, talk about a cycle of like negativity after that audition. Before I went, my friend who is an actor in New York was like, "Listen, honey, if you mess up, you pick up your bag, you walk out with your head up." And so I tried to do that, but the audition was horrible. But Beyonce was so gracious, and I am a big fan because of my experience actually getting to audition for her. But what dance, I would say in general, and being a performer, it has like great things, but it also has negative. So the great thing is, if I'm uncomfortable in a space, if I practice, I can go in and perform. Like, I can show up and do great and have sweat stains after I leave and nobody knows, because I know how to perform. The bad part of it is I know how to perform. And so that's where that hidden depression comes in, that on days that I may not feel my best or struggling, nobody knows that I need help because I'm a performer.
Wow. That's really profound. So does it take really you to reach out and ask people? I mean, within your closest networks, you mentioned, your husband's your support system, and you have these amazing girlfriends, and you have your friends. But how do you proactively, or are there times where there are people reaching out to you? Because there's a difference between the audience and then there's your close-knit group.
Yeah, my close-knit group knows now, because I mean, like, my postpartum depression with my first son was really scary. And then I battled with it a little bit while I was during COVID and civil unrest, and we had a merger. There was a lot going on. So I'm very clear with my close circle when I'm going through, so they know to call and check. And they see the signs, like I won't respond to the group texts, or I'm not posting on social media, and they pick up on those cues and they reach out.
And it's really great to hear about, like, signs that, as friends, there are signs that you could look out for. So, well, I appreciate you sharing that, and it's a great story about Beyonce. And I think there's 2 lessons about performing. The other one is to hold your head up and carry your bag out that door, right?
Even if you messed up at work on a presentation, you walk out with your head up like you did great.
Exactly. That's going to be words to live by. So I think I'm going to ask Christine to come in, because I would love to hear some of the questions from the audience.
Absolutely. So Angel, first of all, thank you. This has been fantastic. And we've had a lot of comments in the chat, and I'm sure you can go back and take a look at them. A lot of just praise for how vulnerable you have been and your level of transparency. It's very refreshing, and everyone really appreciates it. And I think that I first of all want to thank you for that. But one of the things I think is interesting to understand is, have you always been this vulnerable and open to sharing these things about yourself, or is it something that you've learned along the way and feel now more comfortable in doing?
It's definitely something I've learned along the way, growing up. I don't know if it's a Southern thing or a Black family thing or just any family, but I grew up in a household where you keep family business. You don't talk about things that are going on inside this house or with people. And so I grew up really quiet, surprisingly. And dance was my outlet to express myself. And as I got older, I realized the silence was part of what was killing me, because I was holding things in. So now I might not talk about everything. Like, what you get is probably 10% of all the stuff that's going on, whether that's on social media or what I'm talking about today. I do think women should hold something for themselves. But I am more open to using my voice than I was in my younger years.
I love it. And one of the questions that came in, you had mentioned the value in mentorship. And I loved your comment about it's important to have as much coming into the funnel as you have going out to others. So you have kind of that level of mentoring to you, and you found great mentors along the way, it sounds like. And then also you pass that along to others. What words of advice would you give your younger self, and or what words of advice are you giving to your children today to learn about life and career and help them in developing?
I would, a lot of the decisions I made were like a little timid and scared, and I just didn't go for it. Although I've done some great things, but I probably would have left college and gone to LA and or New York and danced and sang and been an actress or on TV, like those type of things that I hesitated because I was like, oh, I got to finish my degree. Oh, now I'm married and I can't do that. Like, I put unnecessary limitations on myself. My husband and I talk about all the time. We were married 9 years before we had our first child. Like, why didn't we go move and live in Europe and backpack and, live in a tent, like just being more bold and free with those decisions and not being so held down of like the standards that you have to have in life.
Yeah, I love that. I think many of us look back and we're like, oh, all those years that I could have done something different or been a little bit more adventurous. And you think you need to be on this straight path and you miss some of those opportunities. But man, it's worked out beautifully for you today, right? So those are great words of advice for sure. Okay, those are the big topics that came up in the chat. I think that, overall, it says here, what is your daily practice? What are your non-negotiables? That was a new one that just came in.
Oh, I love that. So that changes with my seasons. When I had little kids, like there were no daily practices, and I still kind of have little kids. I have my youngest is 4, but they're not babies anymore and breastfeeding and doing the diaper thing. Now I make sure I get up early in the morning and work out, which is hard. I love to sleep. But it helps me start my day in a day that I have control and I get that energy going. What else is non-negotiable is a glass of wine at night and some quiet time. So like I have to go, everybody has to go to bed and I have to like sit in my chair with one glass of wine and chill. And it doesn't, I could be scrolling Instagram mindlessly, watching, have you guys been watching Bridgerton? Watching an episode of Bridgerton. Like I have to have a moment of not mommying, not bossing, not being creative, just being me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I watched Bridgerton too, and also Queen Charlotte, the latest one.
Oh yes, it's so good.
Solid. That's wonderful. There was, I think, one more question that was here, and it goes back to the mentor discussion. But it was asking, I think, a little bit about have you had sponsors in your life, both in life and in your personal life, as well as through your, in your work life and your business life, and do you have a balance of those mentors across your life in different places?
Yeah, I would say my biggest mentor, I wouldn't be where I am from a career standpoint and personally. Like she's helped guide me personally as well. She just got a major job at the largest retailer in the world. So I always talk about Latrice Watkins. I owe my career to her. She's not afraid to tell me that I'm great. She's not afraid to put me in rooms and I'll cry talking about her. But she, even when I was very, very junior as a merchant, she would put me on the plane. She would call me up to the front and make me speak. She very, very an advocate. But then on the flip side, she would say, "What kind of shoes do you have on?"
We all need those people in our lives.
and challenge me to rise to the greatness that she saw in me that I didn't always see in myself. So she's probably been my biggest advocate. I've been able to watch her in rooms and see how she navigates. So a lot of my style, she's got way more intelligence and way more grace, but is modeled after just watching how she moves. So she's one of my biggest. And then, of course, I have my family from a personal perspective. My grandmother is a huge influence on my life. She has not seen this bright red hair or my chop, and she will probably have some words for this hair. But yeah, I have a lot of people that have poured into me along the way.
Angel, I have a follow-up to that question. How did you go about finding Latrice? Like, was it organic or did you have to make a conscious step towards it?
It definitely was organic. She became somebody I looked up to when she was just out of law school and I was in undergrad. So I gravitated to her and I didn't know she was going to be the chief merchandising officer of Walmart, the first female to ever be in that role back then. But I knew she had something special that I wanted to learn from at a very young age.
So that's your advice then. If you're looking for someone to mentor, go for somebody that you think is really special.
Yes. That you have an authentic connection to too. Like I've tried to do those mentorships where they set you up with this VP and that VP and it's awkward. Um, don't do them. It's okay. It's okay to say, thank you for this one meeting, but I don't think it's a good fit. It's probably a better way to say it, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's great advice. Because that's what you'll take out of, if you can relate to somebody, that's when you're going to really gain from it.
Yes.
Right.
It sounds like you found some fantastic people in your life who have inspired you to step up and rise, right? Relative to our theme, but you're very fortunate you found some wonderful people who've supported you. There's one more question that has come in, and it's very specific in nature, but I'd love to get your perspective. And they're asking essentially, sounds like it's somebody who is kind of at a mid-level within their career, very comfortable in their current role, but starting to feel a little bit guilty that they're not pushing themselves for higher level, more executive level positions. Potentially wanting to get advice on, how do you make those decisions to break through that concrete ceiling and push yourself forward, maybe into an uncomfortable space. Would you have any words of advice for them?
So I would say, if you feel like you're stuck or complacent, that may be because you don't have a vision for your life. And maybe your vision, once you sit down and write what the vision is for your life, the job that you have today may be the perfect job because your vision may be more family based and you may be focused on growing a family and doing the things there, or your own personal business and you just need a job to pay the mortgage. Or if you write your vision and the vision is, I want to be the CEO of the company that you work for, the way you move has to become different. The things that you do daily then have to match up to that vision and or strategy you have for yourself. So I always go back to, what is the vision that you have for yourself? And are the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis matching the vision?
Is your vision board an actual board with images and imagery, or is it written? How do you create that vision for you?
I've had so many different ones. You remember when The Secret came out? What was that, 2004, 2005? It was like a poster board and I printed pictures and I did all the magazine cutouts. And it was like stuff like flawless skin, healthy hair, make $100,000. And then I moved to like a Pinterest board where I have a vision, and the Pinterest board now I read a book recently about the one goal. And having that one single goal. And so I just write it down in my notebook, and that's what I'm on. Like our family vision, we have it in a nice frame, and that's more of a strategy, but like my one goal is here and written down.
That's great.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Any additional questions from you, Andrea, that you'd like to ask Angel?
I want to thank you, Angel. This was such a fun conversation. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. And you are really such an inspiration to so many people in this industry. And like the time that you took today is truly given back. So thank you. And my one question would be, is there anything we didn't cover? I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Because I thought it was pretty robust, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we covered a lot. I will say thank you. Thank you to first for opening the door for me to even be on the board. I was on the next gen coming in to, I think I was a director at the time when I came in, but the women in We are incredible. And talk about imposter syndrome. When they ask me, I'm like, do you guys know who sits on the board of We? And you're asking Angel to be the one to speak. It's an incredible group of women, and I'm honored to even be associated with all of you. So appreciate the opportunity. Andrea, you killed it. And Christine, thank you for being so gracious and having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm going to share a screen real quick that gives you all the great links to stay connected with us. We'd love to hear more from you and get you involved with We. Our email address as well as our website will be on the screen for you to take a look at. Please connect. We would love to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care. Thank you, Angel. And thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone, for attending.